Last week, two Australian nurses were sacked for spreading anti-Semitic hate online, and we all sat back and watched with disgust. But this isn't an isolated case, and globally, we're seeing hate rise. Why? Because online content is now entering our workplaces, our communities, and when it comes to global leaders, our hate speech. You see, our mainstream experience at work isn't about large acts of violence. Hate starts in small echo chambers. And when they go unnoticed, we can move into very dangerous territory where hate creeps into our workplaces. I'm Janita from Expand Coaching and Consulting, and our mission is to make workplaces more inclusive, one leader at a time. And in today's Sip and Learn, we are going to delve into the darkness and talk about the cycle of hate and how we can come out on the other side to extinguish our biases. What were those nurses thinking when they posted that vile content during work time? And to bring your attention to it, I'd love to go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs with my excellent drawing behind me. Where are we right now? We can't afford eggs. We're lucky if we can afford housing. The resources are scarce. There's about 1,001 people applying to one job, and our psychological safety is in threat. Neuroscience tells us that hate is rooted in fear. Fear of difference, fear of losing power, and fear of the unknown. But fear doesn't create hate. It's, of course, shaped by our nurture, our upbringing, social conditioning, and systems that reinforce us versus them. Hate thrives in echo chambers where stereotypes go unchecked and small biases grow into something more dangerous. Okay, so how does all of this show up at work? Remember, I said it never tends to show up as the big items. It's in the small daily biases. And I'm going to share some true stories with you to illustrate four of these biases. Number one, a bias for the in group. A head of department stages a global search only to hire someone that they've worked with before in another organization. Number two, microaggressions, and I feel like we all have experienced those. These are subtle comments that make people feel othered. For instance, I don't see color, I treat everybody the same. This actually diminishes people's racial identity and their lived experience. Number three, exclusion in decision making. So, for example, a company that, despite their internal change management procedures, runs a very tokenistic consultation process to push their own agenda. And number four, staying silent when hate surfaces. The example here is when someone makes a gender-based slur, then a leader pikes up and says, "That's just who they are. Ignore them. Don't take it personally." And the scary part about all of this is that most of this happens without bad intent, but intent does not erase impact. If you've identified with any of these scenarios, then you may be asking, what can I do as a mere mortal? Well, the good news is, just as our brain can be wired for hate, it can be wired for inclusion. And I want to introduce this ECMC frame. E is educate yourself on your biases. Be open to different types of content so your feed is not homogenous. Ask people in your workplace, different people, their experience, and learn and be curious. C is for creating safe spaces, to have respectful conversations. That doesn't just mean running to HR when something happens, but opening up that curiosity in a way that engages conversation so you can feel a sense of empathy from the other person. M is for modeling accountability. Say something when you see something. Again, this can be done respectfully. And C is for championing inclusion daily in your rituals, in your team meetings, in your communications. When you do this, you'll see people and yourself rise up this pyramid. As you can see, hate grows when we ignore it. But the good news is that inclusion grows when we nurture it. So my challenge to you is to surface all those biases in your workplace. Surface all those biases within yourself, because we are all prejudiced in some way or another. And there's this thing that Freud calls projection. What we hate in someone else is usually what we hate in ourselves. That's why we can identify it. So find those, feel free to drop them in the comments or just practice them. This is really all about sipping and learning. Until next time, namaste, and thank you so much for listening.